If I were someone who worked at Double Fine, I would be very terrified to work on Psychonauts 2. It's been over a decade since the last game, and it has to live up to the expectations and nostalgia of one of the most loved platformers of all time. Expectations for video games are already completely derailed the moment that they're announced. More so than any other form of media, the hype around upcoming video games feels unjustifiably out of control. And in the end, those absurd expectations are rarely ever met because it's still just like a video game. But when you're making the sequel to a game that has a psychic turtle named Mr. Pokelope in it, how can you not have high expectations?
That's right, baby. Daddy's here. Everything's gonna be alright.
When there's a huge gap between entries in a series, there are 3 ways it can go. You got Duke Nukem Forever, Battletoads, or Doom 2016. Now, if I were to choose which one of these outcomes best fits Psychonauts 2, I'm gonna say Doom 2016. The game starts off by turning a giant brain into cubicles, which is a sentence I will never say again in my life, but it looked pretty cool. This office level is presented as the headquarters of the Psychonauts, and it then reveals that you're actually inside the mind of a blue dentist man. The whole world around you starts to deconstruct as the office gets replaced with walls of gums and teeth and veins. It's like Inception, but with a lot of teeth. And this level starts off showing you that Psychonauts 2 is completely aware of what made the first game good. This level is mind-bending and interesting and engaging. It makes a tutorial that's actually fun to do. And I was convinced that this game was probably going to go in a good direction from there. After you go through this tutorial level, you're introduced to the Mother Lobe, which acts as this game's hub world, and I absolutely love how this looks. There's so many people to talk to, like this bacon guy. I like the bacon guy. After this, you start going through more of the mental worlds, and they feel a lot more consistent in quality than the first game, creating vibrant and distinct worlds that are also unique. It's hard to believe this is all in one game. One of the earliest levels has Raz messing with the mind of a doctor, and he gets them addicted to gambling. And you get to experience this by going through the same parts of a level, but now altered with this casino perspective on a hospital. I mean, you can sit here and look at the details of a hospital parking lot for like 30 minutes and find so many small things scattered everywhere. This level of detail is held throughout the entire game with tons of environmental art specifically made for each area. And not only is it really impressive to see how much detail they put into it, but also how much fun they had making all of this stuff. When it comes to environmental storytelling, it seems really daunting to me. I feel like I'd suck at it. But when your game is about exploring the minds of people, all conventional design can be thrown out the window, and you can have a person that has a pea cup for a head. The doors are open for interpreting different experiences and emotions in a physical way, like a cooking show where you frantically run around and cook dishes for judges, and they provide wonderful compliments for your creations, such as
slightly better than a mouthful of nails.
or this other level that's essentially like being on a sensory overload acid trip. It's saturated and abrasive with color and sound. And oh my god, the noise that the tongues make on this level just freaked my brain out. I couldn't, it's gross.
I've forgotten how many flavors there are.
And this level would get interrupted by panic attacks, which come in the form of mini bosses that are these weird alien dogs, and they have the perfect model for something called a panic attack. But my favorite example of the level telling the emotions has to be this one where you explore stranded islands in this character's mind. How this level presents loneliness and isolation feels so potent and clever. It creates this perfect representation of these feelings. And this is why Psychonauts is such a cool damn game. I cannot think of another 3D platformer where rolling around on a bunch of teeth and gums would just make sense for a level. These visualizations of characters' mental states are so well presented and filled with purposeful metaphor. Oh, and by the way, I have only mentioned 1/4 of the mental worlds in the game, and the rest of it is just as great to explore. Putting all these levels next to each other and just cutting between them and seeing how drastically the visuals change is something I cannot get over. And I haven't even gotten to the overworld locations yet. There's only a few of them in the game, but they're massive. My favorite of which is the Questionable Area, which is a campground themed around mysteries and supernatural activity. When I played through the first game, my biggest problem with it was the abilities in combat. and you can watch my previous video to see what I said about it if you want more context, but the abilities in this one are much better. You have the choice of what abilities you upgrade throughout the game, and that's a huge improvement to the experience. There's also these pins, which can make a variety of small changes to your abilities, like changing your levitation ball color or adding more power to the abilities. But for some god-awful reason, you can only equip 3 of these, and there's like a ton of them in the game. It would have been nice to have more space to equip those cosmetic ones and also the ones that actually alter abilities so that you can have a little bit of both. But when you only have 3 slots, you feel like you have to use them well. I'm left to decide between an upgrade that actually impacts the gameplay or one that lets me pet animals. And you know I'm gonna pick the one where I pet animals. A lot of the powers in the game were reworked to function better overall, but especially in combat. The highlight of this has to be telekinesis. It's so much better than the previous game, and it feels a lot like throwing shit around in Control. To make combat more interesting, they also added significantly more enemy types, and they all take form as nasty brain things. Doubts are these goopy guys that slow you down and need to be killed with fire. Regrets carry weights that you can pull from them with telekinesis and throw back at them. There's definitely a little more depth to combat in this one, and that's a really good improvement. I wouldn't say it's something that you should come to this game expecting to be the best part of it, it's just been improved upon. The platforming has pretty much stayed the same, with a few new abilities that do add to the platforming experience. They did change jumping up quite a bit. It goes for more of a tight control feel than the first game's more floaty physics-y feel. I kind of prefer the floaty jumping from the first game, but I also understand why they moved in a different direction because most people don't really like that. I'm sure this comes as no surprise, but the writing and characters remain one of the strongest features, with a lot of returning characters and also a lot of new ones. There's a ridiculous amount of dialogue in this game, and it's all consistent in its quality and humor, exploring old characters' backstories and learning more about them while also meeting a lot of new faces that are just as fun to talk to as the old ones. I really like these tooth fairies, and I brought up the pea cup lady. She's pretty cool. The interns are all pretty cool. My favorite is Sam Boole, who is the older sister to Dogen from the first game, and she also has a very interesting bond with animals.
You sure? Okay, good boy. Now, try again, but this time think about personal commitment and delivering excellence every day, all right? Sorry you had to see that, Raz.
I don't make games, but it seems like a common issue that dialogue just seems to overlap a lot or just cut off because of like a cutscene or something. And that really sucks for a game that has a ton of dialogue and I want to hear all of it. I don't really know a way to work around it, but it's just frustrating to miss dialogue because of something that feels out of my control. Obviously, I'm not going to say much about the story because I don't really want to spoil it for anyone, but I enjoyed it a lot and I think anyone who liked Psychonauts 1 will really like what it has to offer. I almost forgot to put this in the video, but the soundtrack for this game is amazing. There are so many fantastic tracks, including many motifs and bits thrown in from the first game soundtrack. Overall, I think Psychonauts is a great follow-up to the previous game and lives up to the expectations for the series. The levels in this one feel a lot more consistent in quality compared to the first, but I would say that the highlights of Psychonauts 1 stuck with me just a little bit more, like Black Velvetopia or Milkman Conspiracy. It's honestly just refreshing to play a platformer that has a lot of really unique worlds to explore and an actual story and set of characters that isn't just bland and uninteresting. The presentation and writing remains super unique, but it has a fresh look that feels like the right step to adapting the art style to a new era of games. It makes me way too happy to say this phrase. There is a game like Psychonauts. That last video title may have not had much staying power, but Psychonauts 2 did. Thank you for watching my video. Rockin' Stone.